This is the Nike Alphafly. I first started running in this shoe in November of 2020, and since then, I've put it through a gauntlet of conditions. Freezing cold temperatures, snowy conditions, pavement, dirt roads, fast 5Ks, and 20-mile long runs. How has it held up to this treatment? Let's put on these shoes one last time and then talk about the Nike Alphafly after 100 miles. 10.89 miles, 7 minutes, 50 seconds per mile, 151 beats per minute today, taking the Nike Alphafly out for a race week workout. So a light workout today. I'm racing in 3 days, but this workout was a perfect send off for the Nike Alphafly after 100 miles. Now, before I give you my thoughts on this shoe and how it's held up over that time, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes I purchased myself. No one sent them to me and no one's paying me to make this video. And no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Nike Alphafly after 100 miles. First, let's talk about specs so we know what we're talking about here. This is a 40 millimeter shoe with that wonderful ZoomX foam in the midsole. It's got a carbon fiber plate and giant air zoom pods, one on each side of each foot. So you actually have 4 of them total lining the pads of your foot to give you just extra springiness and extra impact absorption. It's set up in a 4 millimeter drop. So you've got a total of 36 millimeters of stack height between the air zoom pocket, the carbon fiber plate, and the ZoomX foam that's in the forefoot. Up top, you have Atom Knit, which is just the next generation of Flyknit. It's thinner, it breathes better, but it's still just as strong as Flyknit was. There is no separate tongue. It's all kind of connected in one piece of material for this shoe. So there's no padding on the tongue, which I absolutely love. Around back, there is a little bit of structure in the heel cup area, but not a lot. You can kind of bend it a little bit, and it does go pretty tall. So there is some element of rigidity back in the heel. The Achilles comes up pretty tall on this shoe, but it hasn't ever bothered me in terms of any rubbing on the Achilles. What we also have, though, to protect the Achilles and to help keep the shoe in place is a bumper pad right along the heel, so that way everything stays nice and soft on the back of the foot, but also just helps keep everything seated and snug inside the shoe as you're running. On the outsole, we have some exposed foam, but we also have kind of 2 strips of rubber that are color matched to the foam here that are going along the sides of the shoe that are really going to protect it for those times where either you're in your warm-up or cool downs or in your recovery paces. But when you're racing, it's got a different type of rubber that's much thicker that's protecting those 2 air zoom pockets and the ZoomX foam that's in the forefoot. There's a lot of technology in this shoe. Nike spared no expense when making this one, and the total weight for this shoe comes in at 7.4 ounces. So what was it like to run in this shoe? The Alphafly for me is exactly what I'm looking for in a marathon super shoe. It's got a foam that is very soft, that's super squishy, but it also bounces back really quickly. So it's not like you're stepping on a pillow or memory foam where you're really pushing into something. It absorbs impact quickly and it expands back out to its normal shape very quickly as well. It also gets a lot of help from that carbon fiber plate that's in this shoe that is nice and springy, that I can feel it, that I feel with every foot strike. As well, I also feeling those air zoom pockets that are in the front. They're just giant. If you've seen Zoom Air from like a Nike Pegasus shoe, like say from like the 36 and before, the Zoom Air pockets were really thin, just a couple of millimeters. This just takes that concept and scales it up by what feels like an order of magnitude. It's just a giant air pocket that I really wasn't sure about when I first saw those things. They looked so goofy. But underfoot, they definitely work. the whole system works together so that every time your foot hits the ground, you are moving quite a bit. You're compressing a lot of things, but all those things, the ZoomX foam, the carbon fiber plate, and the Zoom Air pocket, all those things, when they're compressed, they all want to decompress. And when it does that, it pushes you out forward as you are pushing off for your next stride. So it all works together really fluidly. It doesn't feel like three things working together. It just feels like one fluid system that works really well for me at marathon pace. That's where this shoe just absolutely shines. But it's not just a marathon shoe. People are using this shoe for all sorts of distances, whether it's from the marathon all the way down to the 5K. And in fact, this shoe was the same shoe that Stephanie Flippin used to win the United States 100-mile championship. But a big question that I think a lot of people have had is, well, how does this shoe hold up over time? In my experience, I feel like this shoe has held up far better than I thought it would for a shoe that kind of performs at such a high level. So usually what I think of it is, the better the shoe performs, the more race specific it is, the less likely it's going to be kind of a miles per dollar value purchase. But my Alphafly still feel like they're brand new. When I put them on, it still feels like a very special shoe to put on and race in. Once you get up to speed, it just gets there and wants to stay there and is very happy at running hard and being run hard. I absolutely love running in this shoe. For me, the ZoomX foam feels just as squishy, but also responsive as ever. It's holding up really well. Better, in fact, than my Vaporfly 4% ever did, and I think better than the Next Percents did in terms of the ZoomX foam itself. I'm used to seeing a lot of that wrinkling that we saw, especially in those 4%. Those things got so wrinkly. It was cosmetic, but it was a way of seeing that the shoe had some mileage on them. Even these, there's still some wrinkles there, but I think that even on a cosmetic level, they're doing really well. And from a functional level, they feel like they're brand new. The carbon fiber plate, still super springy. I'm not sure that I've ever seen any shoe whose carbon fiber plate kind of loses rigidity or springiness over time. But I'm still feeling that really strong sensation of push that I get, like kind of almost like from behind with each foot strike when I'm running in the shoe. And those Zoom Air pockets are still nice and bouncy. I just feel like it's like kind of like squeezing a racquetball. It just feels like you squeeze it and it comes back right away. And all of that still is working just as well for me now as it did fresh out of the box. Now, I don't have like a fresh pair of Alphaflys to compare them against, but I don't really feel like I'm running in a 100-mile shoe. And even looking at the outsole, the parts of the exposed foam, there's a little bit of wear there. I'm thinking that's more just from the materials drying out. I've been running on it on some sand. I ran it in the winter time on salted roads. So I feel like that's really what's happening. I don't think the friction of me running on the ground is what's causing it. But I feel like there's a little bit towards the heel where the ZoomX foam looks like it's kind of drying out a little bit. But it's just a very subtle amount. I wouldn't really notice it unless I was looking for it and looking at it really closely. For example, like when I was trying to film it. And then on those rubber strips along the outer edges of the shoe, I was expecting that I would see a lot more wear on that rubber. I'm seeing a very small amount that I'm really quite surprised about. Now, I've been working a lot more on my hip mobility and also my foot strike and my gait cycle. So maybe these are signs that I'm improving in those areas. But in other shoes that I've gotten to the 100-mile mark, I'm still seeing like certain kind of like signature areas of wear that definitely make it look like, yeah, that's a shoe that I have been running in. I'm not seeing the usual wear patterns in the rubber on these shoes, so I'm really quite impressed. I am seeing a little bit of wear in the forefoot, really where I'm spending the most of my time, at least when I'm working in the shoe. I'm spending a lot of time in that forefoot. So some of these ridges, I'm starting to see the rubber starting to wear a little bit. So it doesn't look brand new, but I still feel like I have so much grip in there. And the shoe, originally, I felt like there was too much or more than the shoe really needed in the forefoot. So in the durability perspective, having that extra amount of rubber to start with means that even now, 100 miles in, there's still plenty of life in these shoes. Even the adamant itself, it's starting to mold itself a little bit. I'm not saying that the adamant stretches to your foot, but I could see there's a part over here where the Atom knit is kind of shaping itself towards the contours really of my pinky toes that are out here, because the one problem that I have with this shoe is that it's a toe cruncher. I feel like my toes definitely take a beating whenever they're in this shoe, because there's just not enough room in this part of the shoe for me. And so like I definitely get my toes beat up here, and the Atom knit is kind of bulging out that part where my pinky toe is. The other area where it's crunching my toes is right here. I think it's this toe cap part that's right here on the front of the shoe. As like the shoe gets compressed, I feel like part of this is digging into kind of like the nail bed of my big toe. And so my big toe also gets crunched in the right foot specifically, much more than the left foot. So that's like the biggest problem that I have with this shoe. And that unfortunately doesn't change over time. The shoe does kind of like shape towards your foot, but it's not gonna ever have a lot more room than it did when you first bought it. So that's just something else to keep in mind. It's not a small complaint. It's a pretty big complaint that I have, but it's one that I'll kind of take because the rest of the shoe is just so fantastic. Now, normally I would expect for like a next percent that I could race in it up to 150 miles. So basically, if I've got about 125 miles in a pair of next percents, I feel very comfortable towing the line for another marathon. I feel like this shoe can go much further than that. And I've seen other people have taken theirs much further and are still racing in them. So I feel like, I know that there's the occasional anecdotal situation of some people are popping their airbags, but as long as the airbags aren't like physically popping, like you're not getting punctured by something that's on the road, as long as that's not happening, I really think that these shoes are gonna last a very long time. So I would probably push out my expected useful life of these shoes past that 150 mile mark. So you get like a total of 200 miles of racing and workouts in this shoe before it then kind of gets relegated to just the workout shoe. It took me a long time to get to this shoe because I just wasn't sure that I was going to like it, but it ends up being like a fantastic marathon racing shoe. It really just works. Everything works together. And in a way that just boggles my mind, it's holding up really well over the miles too. So like you usually just don't see high performance and durability in the same shoe, but I'm definitely getting both in mine. Let me know in the comments if you're getting a very different experience or if you're getting the same experience in your Alphaflys, because I'd love to hear about that too and see kind of like what's going on with this shoe for those of you who are using it, not only for your marathons, but also for your training as well. I'd love to hear how you guys are using it. Or better yet, please feel free to stop by the live stream that I do just about every day, and I'd love to talk to you guys about this shoe there. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?